Hello. I look really blurry. I don't know. Look at the state again, as per usual. Right, I think we are live. I'm beginning to really hate Facebook because I'm forever struggling to get in. Look, I've got washing and ironing and everything. If I go that way, there's roller boots and trainers. If I go that way, there's ironing. Honestly, get used to this, people, because when you have kids, that's what they do. They make you go on air looking like this. It's not good. I hope you've got some good questions for me today. What do I need to tell you apart from the fact that I live in a pit? The mouse is back. So for anybody who was here last year and knew that at 6:30, well, 7:30 every night whilst I was in the middle of teaching, a mouse would run across my kitchen floor that got fatter and fatter and fatter, and saw me like practically standing on chairs because this mouse is back. I don't think it's the same one because I caught the one last time in Margot's mouth, the tail hanging out. So we think that one died, but its little baby is here and thriving. So again, if I just suddenly jump up and down and in shock, it's because there's a mouse. In fact, actually, I can show you a picture of said mouse because this came out last night. Look, some might say it looks like a rat. Not a very good picture, that is it? I'm trying for you, trying. Well, there you go. Look at that. Not everybody's got one of them, have they? So yeah, so we've got a mouse back in the house. What else have I been working on today? Here we go. I've been recommended by my midwife to look into hypnobirthing, a water birth and aromatherapy for my birth as I suffer from anxiety. I was just wondering if you could recommend anything as I don't know where to start. Are there any oils or bubble baths that I recommend for this? Have you heard pregnant women need to be careful of using certain oils? So there are certain oils that you do need to be careful of. Excuse my son in the background. He does it every week, 4 o'clock on a Thursday or a Tuesday. He's always here. He has no boundaries. So those are sort of two-thing questions. There are some oils, especially essential oils, that you need to be careful of using. So clary sage, don't use unless you're in labour. And equally, when you go into the hospital, if you're going to use aromatherapy, then that's great, but just check with your midwife that she's happy to use it, because those midwives like to get pregnant. Not me. Done with that malarkey. But they may well be pregnant and they're not going to obviously just say to you, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant, especially if they're only so just check that you're okay to use them. In terms of the hypnobirthing, I think your midwife is great advice because hypnobirthing can really help. My advice is to go to Let's Talk Birth and Baby, and I'm sure that Laura, if she's on here watching, will put the link up to you. And we've got Katie, who does midwife-led hypnobirthing classes on there. And it's really accessible. So rather than spending hundreds of pounds on stuff, Katie's workshop is £20. It's 2 hours long. And she goes into all the principles of hypnobirthing, and then she does weekly practice sessions which really help you. And the good thing about Katie's is that it's not just focusing on natural birth, so it's focusing on any type of birth, but helping you to stay calm and feel relaxed as you can be. And it's just a really realistic hypnobirthing, but it will really help. So yes, so do that. Are there any oils or bubble baths recommended for this? I think just get yourself a nice candle, get yourself, it's just something that you like. I don't think there's anything that's majorly recommended not. Neil's Yard is very nice, of which we have a code for. So yeah, just drop me a line. The other thing is to sign yourself up to the free antenatal class, which is on a Monday evening or a Tuesday morning with Let's Talk Birth and Baby. And that on there, you'll be able to get some more information from me because I take those classes. Just wondering if I should shave or not before labour. I would if you can, just because if you go for a cesarean section and the area where we would do the incision is not shaved and you've got growth there, we will do a very rudimentary shave. And so it's not particularly done with a huge amount of care. It's just done with an electric razor, and we just do that basically. So you probably want to get yourself a bit trimmed beforehand. What is the likelihood of me hemorrhaging again? I lost over 3 litres of blood, retained my placenta, got sepsis with my son, and I'm due in March, and I'm so nervous. Oh, bless you, Darcy. Well, The good thing is, because you've already had a baby before and you've already had that experience, we anticipate it next time. We sort of anticipate these things that might happen. But obviously, if you went into it low risk and it just was just one of those things, so what they will do is, once your baby is born, they will want to pop a cannula in your hand. So they will recommend with that blood loss that you have your baby on the high risk unit. And that's not because you're at a massive high risk, but it's just because you've had a dodgy experience first time around. And they will pop a cannula in your hand towards the end of labour. They might do it sooner, but I would do it sort of once you're in established labour and put a cannula in your hand. And what they will have is, by the side, they will have we call it 40 units. So often if somebody's bleeding heavily, you might hear someone shout, "Somebody get 40 units." And that is 40 units of the drug that we use to help contract your uterus. But with women who have had previous bleeds, what we'll do is, as soon as your baby is born, we'll start that going. We'll just turn it on and you'll get it anyway. And you will be monitored much closer for bleeding. So the likelihood is that they'll nip it in the bud before we get to that point. So try not to stress too much, because we keep a real close eye on you, and fingers crossed it'll be smoother sailing. Sounds like you had a bit of a rough time. I bet you felt a bit ropey after that blood loss. I lost 2.5 and it's enough, and especially if you're a little person, it's a lot of blood. How do you tell the difference between bloating and starting to get a bump? Or when can you start to show? 11 plus 2 weeks, and I'm not sure if it's a bump or just bloating. I'd say it's probably a little bit of bloating. I remember my friend coming to me and I was about that. I was like, "God, have you seen this bump?" She said, "That's not a bump." She said, "You're just overweight." I was like, "Thanks, love." I love her. She's one of those people that she's worse than me. She makes me look timid. But yeah, I would say once you start to get to that 14, 15 weeks, you may start to feel the bump come out of the pelvis. But, it might be a little bump. You just, either way, doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, I'd imagine it's possibly a little bit of bloating. There we go. Our lovely Laura's put the link up there for anybody wanting to book onto any of those classes. Just had my 32-week appointment and I'm only measuring 28 centimetres. So I was 28 centimetres 4 weeks ago and have a growth scan tomorrow. Slightly nervous. Baby is moving fine and heartbeat is fine. So what we've got to remember about the measurements is, although they are important, the reason we send you for the scan, excuse me, is because there is a margin of error. And it could be, especially if your first measurement was done by a different midwife, that you've measured slightly differently. So it could be, 2 centimetres is only that. So there could be that margin of error there. And quite often we go for growth scans and they come back and they say, "Well, no, it's all normal," and your baby is moving. One of the best signs of baby's well-being is good movement. So you've got a massive tick in the box there. So luckily you don't have long to wait for your scan. So hopefully you're going to be coming back to me on Tuesday and saying, "Yeah, all went fine." But if not, if they come back and say, "Yeah, the growth is tailing off," they've picked it up, you'll be under the monitor, you'll be being monitored, and they will just monitor you to make sure that we don't leave baby too long, and that we time things right and think, right, okay, baby is better off out than in. So try not to worry too much. I'm currently pregnant on baby number 2 and I have no cravings, no morning sickness. I'm scared something is wrong. Is it normal? It really can be, Sean. And some people, I think as well, because we sort of say, "Oh, the sicker you feel, the better it is." But it doesn't necessarily mean that at all. Some people just do sail through pregnancy with no symptoms. Some women have a no symptom pregnancy one time and then they're as sick as the dog the next. So it doesn't necessarily mean that anything is going wrong. It's really those first few weeks are really tough, aren't they, when you're not really being monitored? Yeah, really tough, but yeah, it can be normal. I'm 8 weeks pregnant today and was due to have my first midwife booking appointment in 2 weeks. I've received a letter that they have rescheduled later on in February and I'll be 15 weeks at this appointment. When did everyone else have their first appointment scan, midwife scan? So whoever has said that, if that is in replacement of your scan, you need to push back on that, because you need to have your scan prior to that. However, if you've already got a scan date and have just not seen a midwife, it's not that big an issue seeing the midwife after that date. That's not a big problem. But if she's saying to you, "Actually, we're not going to see you at all until 14 weeks, then that's not good. But obviously with things being as they are, things are getting jigged up and down a bit. But you definitely need to have had your scan before 13 weeks. So as long as that's in place, then I wouldn't worry too much. Currently early in pregnancy, I'm wondering about breastfeeding versus bottle feeding when baby is here. I'd really like to breastfeed if possible, but I'd also like dad to be able to feed. So my advice to you, whoever's written this letter 1902, this message is go over to Let's Talk Birth and Baby. The link is up at the top there, and sign up to the infant feeding class. It's such a comprehensive class. It's about just under 3 hours long, and we talk about both formula and breastfeeding and mixing it up a bit and the pros and cons of doing this, that and the other, colostrum harvesting, everything you need to know about feeding. So that would be my advice, is to sign up to that. I've just shouted at the cat as she was being naughty. It felt like a big sharp pain in my belly button. It's throbbing at the moment. Do you think it's a pulled muscle? Goodness me, Sophie, how loud did you shout at that cat? And what was he doing? I just give yourself a little while. Make sure baby's still moving. You probably have just twigged something a little bit. It's funny because I was doing decided I'm going to start stretching, Sophie, that I need to get well from the inside out and start doing yoga and all those adult things. And they had me trying to stretch into all sorts of positions that I couldn't. It was like trying to stretch an oak tree to be a pretzel. It wasn't going well. Well, honestly, I swear to God, I thought my stomach was going to come out of my belly button. But after a few hours, it did die down. But just make sure everything's all right with baby's movements, lovely. And stop shouting at your cat. I am approximately 6 weeks pregnant and I've mild cramping since just before my period was due. There's no blood, but I can't stop panicking about miscarriage. Any tips, advice on staying calm and not focusing on negatives? What's the normal cramps wise? I also have a lot of watery discharges. This normal? So yeah, watery discharge is normal and it's a good sign. Your bleeding is a good sign. Your cramps could be implantation cramps. That's just as the baby's really getting in there. And I'd say this watery discharge is a sort of hormonal sign, so that's all good as well. I think the only tip I can say is that you've got to just keep saying to yourself, worrying and worrying and worrying about it. It's not like if you don't worry, things will go all wrong. It's not going to change the outcome, and stress hormones are no good. So far, nothing, it is normal to have cramps, aches and pains in early pregnancy. So you've got to sort of think, actually, cramps, aches and pain. Look at our other lady that's earlier on. She's the opposite. She's saying, I can't feel anything and I'm really worried. You're saying, I'm feeling this and I'm really worried. So it's about understanding that it doesn't really matter what's going on, you worry. And so far, neither of you have been given any indicative or major signs that there is anything wrong. And it's really hard. Me saying don't worry, it's like saying don't think about bananas, isn't it? Don't think about David Beckham. Sorry. It's almost impossible, but you've just got to just keep going. Try and enjoy your pregnancy, because it won't change the outcomes. There's no point being miserable for the next few weeks. You may as well be jolly, because it's not going to change anything. But it all sounds good to me, my lovely. The midwife weighed me before Christmas at 8 weeks pregnant and I was 9 stone 7. I'm now 12 weeks pregnant and weigh 9 stone. Is it normal to lose weight in the first trimester? So she weighed you just before Christmas and you were 9 stone 7. So it depends on when you say just before Christmas, and it depends on what you've been doing. Had you been eating a bit too much, and loads of things. And half a stone, I wouldn't want you to lose much more than that. I'd want you to start at least staying the same and gaining. But I think if you feel well and you're eating well, then I wouldn't worry too much. Again, making sure that you've got a healthy diet, and do you feel well, or do you feel that you are losing weight? So I think there's those sort of things. If it might just be a bit of a fluctuation. It could be that on that run up to Christmas you put a bit on because you were eating chocolate or having Christmassy bits, coupled with a bit of bloating, and then that's died down. So I think unless you know what your normal starting weight is, if you're normally around 9 stone 2, and you've gone, so I think it's not massive, but you don't want to lose any more. I'm 42 weeks. This is my first pregnant and a brilliant surprise. Oh no, I'm 42. This is my first pregnant and a brilliant surprise. Isn't it funny how different strokes for different folks? Because I'm 44. If somebody told me I was pregnant, I'd be horrified. I think it's lovely. And do you know what? I'd be horrified because my husband would be horrified. I would not be. I did say to him this morning, you do realise if that ever happened, we'd be keeping it. And he just went quiet. But I'm assuming, bless you, that this is probably your first child. Oh, look, I'm 42 weeks. This is my first pregnancy and a brilliant surprise, as I was told in 2017 I couldn't have children due to endometriosis. I'm currently 5 weeks pregnant. My doctor has refused to see me, saying that I register the pregnancy with the hospital and they deal with it. I've registered the pregnancy with the hospital and they have said they won't see me for my first appointment until week 12. Does this sound right? I'm really worried it could be wrong or could go wrong. Bless you. And I understand that this is all pregnancies are precious, but you've been told you couldn't have one, you found out you can have one. That's lovely. The only thing I would say is that, one, you need to make sure that you are in the system, and secondly, that it's not interrupting your scan, because you need to have that scan by your 13-week point. So 12 weeks for your appointment is leaving it a bit late. So I would wait another 2 or 3 weeks, and then I would ring them back and say, I just want to make sure, can somebody tell me, one, am I in the system, and secondly, is there a date coming through for my scan? And as I said, if you're not seeing your actual midwife just for your booking appointment, it's not a massive issue, but we want that scan. So that's what I would say. And congratulations, I'm thrilled for you. I always think it's really nice in lots of ways when you have a baby that little bit older, because I think you've done a lot more things and then you're just happy to settle down. It's exciting. Hello, I'm 39 plus 5 with my third pregnancy. I had a sweep yesterday afternoon and I was 2 centimetres dilated with a very anterior cervix. Since last night, I've had some show coming away and very strong period cramping coming in waves, which woke me in the middle of the night. Lasted about 3 hours and then calmed into the background, crampy feeling. Do you think it will progress? Probably, Amy. I would have thought so. The only thing I would say is that 2 centimetres when you've had a third baby is what we call a multips cervix. Basically, multips saying that you've already had more than one baby. Well, you've actually had a baby, and so it probably sits around that anyway. The fact that it's anterior is good, so it's coming forward, and you're having these cramps. So yeah, I would say it's probably not that far off. Hopefully by Tuesday or Thursday next week, when I'm doing the lives again, you'll be able to come back and tell us what you've had. Congratulations. Hello, Louise. I had a baby boy on 1st of September. I have every month. Now, you see, 1st of September. That's a funny day to have your baby, isn't it? Some people are thrilled, some people not so, because if your baby's born on the 31st of April, they're the youngest in the school year. 1st of September, they're the oldest in the school year. So you then get an extra year of them being at home before you send them to school. Some people are happy, some people not so. Depends on the day. Anyway, Julia. I had a baby boy in 1st of September. I have every month my period, very heavy and so painful, even that from much pain and bleeding. I have every month hemorrhoids. I breastfeed him. Do you think I need to I think you should go to the GP if they're really heavy and they are causing you to feel rough. I'm not sure that the bleeding and the hemorrhoids are they're necessarily, well, they're not connected, but obviously the hemorrhoids might exacerbate the hormones may exacerbate the hemorrhoids. So I think, listening to that, I think it sounds like you need to go to your GP. 16 weeks with back pain is getting worse with walking. Is this caused by a front placenta? Not necessarily, Zoe, but it's probably caused by changes in posture and that sort of thing. We have got a pelvic girdle pain workshop coming up with Michelle, who's our specialist women's physio. And although you're saying it's back pain, she may be able to, in that workshop, if you sign up for that, give you some pointers as to managing it. But yeah, it's probably not because of your placenta, it's more postural. Shona is currently 27 weeks and 4 days with her second baby. Her first baby was breached, so had her planned section. Do you know when I'm likely to see a consultant to discuss my options? So that's going to come down to your midwife. I mean, if the only reason your baby was born by cesarean was because of breach, they will be encouraging you to go for a VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean. And you will probably be referred to a VBAC clinic rather than the consultant. So I would speak to your midwife and ask what's going on. Do I want to, Brian Kelly Smith, message investment. Do we want to invest $3,000 into his Cash App? I don't think so, Brian. Thanks, but no. I'm 31 weeks and I keep getting blurred vision once a day, only lasts 20 to 40 minutes. That's a long time. I don't have any other signs of preeclampsia. Should I be concerned? I think you should get your blood pressure checked, Claire, and see your midwife. Disturbances to vision can be a sign of preeclampsia, and even though it's not coming with any other symptoms, I'd still want you to get checked out, my lovely. What are the signs of your waters leaking? So wetness, feeling a leaking, and that's about it really. It's about whether you feel you're losing fluid from down below. If I have a complicated medical and family medical history, but none of it actually affects me anymore and I'm otherwise healthy, will I be consultant led? I'm worried I won't be able to have a water birth. It just depends on what those complications are. But generally, as long as it's not impacting you and it's a family history, I would be surprised if it would stop you. But you have said you've got a complicated medical history. So I think it's impossible for me to say really without knowing really. I recently found out I'm pregnant and just had my booking appointment over the phone. I thought I still had to go in for blood tests at 8 weeks, but they said that they will be done at 12 weeks instead. I was hoping the 8-week appointment would give me some more reassurance, everything is okay. Is this normal? How can I put my mind at rest during this 4-week wait? Okay, so what I would say about that is even if they'd have seen you at 8 weeks, the questions would have been exactly the same. And other than checking your blood pressure and your urine, they wouldn't have done anything. At 8 weeks, they wouldn't have tried to listen into the baby. They wouldn't have done anything. And I think what they're probably trying to do, and it sounds like a sort of a familiar thread, is they're trying to combine your scan appointment with your booking bloods and stuff, because actually it's a bit of a double up. And once you go for your booking blood, your scan, they generally do bloods as well at the same time. So I think they're just sort of cutting out one of those appointments, obviously because of COVID. So I wouldn't worry about it. In terms of how can you put your mind at rest, you've just got to just sort of think each day, take each day as it comes, and assuming there's no big sign that anything's wrong, just assume that everything is okay. It's a horrible time in pregnancy because there's nothing to reassure you, is there? But it's just one of those things, unfortunately. One emergency section, then a planned section. Is a VBAC achievable? I think it's achievable. Whether the consultants will think it's advisable is another thing. And the fact that you had, so how long you've got October 19. Okay, so you've got 2 years between. I think you'd need to talk to the thing is as well, Georgia, is it's worth understanding from the notes from your second C-section, from your C-sections, what the scar tissue was like, what they felt the tissues of the uterus was like. So they may be able to give you some advice from that. There are some times when we do a section, it's quite a tricky section, and then we'll actually say to women, if you ever have any more, one, we would advise you not to have any more, or if you do, we would definitely advise this. So it may be worth asking them to look back on the notes to see what they would recommend based on the previous section. Baby girl is 10 weeks old. For about 3 weeks now, she's fidgety at night. Once she's put down in bed in her next to me, she is still for around 20 minutes, and then her arms and legs are bashing around. Her arms in particular moving side to side and rubbing her face. She has her eyes closed, so we're thinking she's half asleep. Only stops if we rest a hand to comfort her. Doesn't do this during the day or naps. Any suggestions what to do? Could it be? Do other babies? I think other babies do this. We do have 10 weeks. I would probably go on the 4 month. We have a 4 to 18 month workshop. And if you go on to Carla at Snooze Tots on Instagram and ask that question, she may be able to help you. But she does workshops for both new and a little bit older babies. So probably, Leah, I would, if you were going to do a workshop at 10 weeks, I would go on the 4 to 18 months, because that's going to give you stuff moving forward, and you could still ask a question about how your little one's getting on. But it does sound quite normal. What help is available for mums who struggle to breastfeed but really want to? I failed twice, but would, I presume you're going to say, really like to. I think if you're still pregnant, Julie, I would definitely urge you to do the infant feeding class, which is through Let's Talk Birth and Baby, and I take that class. It's nearly 3 hours long, and in terms of the breastfeeding, you will really recognise when you do the class, you'll probably, having tried this twice, you'll probably have to sort of sit and think, that happened to me, that happened to me, because the class is not about the benefits of breastfeeding and all the bloody health visits and all that nonsense. Don't show you any perfect videos of breastfeeding. I talk about the physiology of breastfeeding, why it's so difficult and why so many people give up when they didn't want to. So it really gives you some strategies to put in place to get through those hurdles that you encounter through breastfeeding, rather than me just going, oh, it's a wonderful journey. No, it's not. It's hard work, but it can be wonderful if you can crack it. But you need that sort of kickstart. So that would be my advice, is to get onto that class, and the link is up at the top with Let's Talk Birth and Baby. Elise is 25 weeks pregnant with her third. She had both in her hometown but now moved away. I'm nervous as I don't know the hospitals, and hearing about retained placentas, etc. Very nervous this time as I deliver very quickly and hospital is 40 minutes away. So you've got two different issues there about retained placentas. So, you know, if you've had two babies before and you didn't retain your placenta, there's the hope that it will go plain sailing. I mean, if you had straightforward experiences before, Elise, would you consider doing a home birth? Because that is a possibility. The other thing I would say, given that you are feeling a bit anxious, why don't you try doing a hypnobirthing workshop, just to give you some things to help with your anxiety on the run up. What can I expect labour to look like when I'm MRSA positive? I've been told that it won't change anything. I've been told I'll be admitted for a full week. No one can tell me what to expect. You won't be admitted for a full week. I can't believe in a million years you would. I wouldn't have thought that at all. So basically, if you test MRSA positive, I would say basically just the staff will be a little bit more vigilant about their universal precautions in terms of hands and gloves and all that sort of stuff, but it shouldn't affect your care at all. I would have thought things would just go in as normal. Claire, I'm 14 weeks plus 2. When should I start to feel the baby? I'm so excited. Oh, I've got a short sort of bubbly sensation, but not sure if this is, that might be a bit butterfly-y, that sort of thing. But again, I still have women that come on and they're 22 weeks and they're a bit like, not so sure. So it can still be a while. I'm classed as high risk as my placenta prolapsed with my first. So I'm not sure about the terminology in terms of placenta prolapsed. Do you mean that you had an abruption, which obviously does make you high risk? And if that's the case, what I would say is that with this being your third baby, your first, any signs that you've got that anything's happening, I would go straight into the hospital. But again, I would speak to your hospital. You're in a new area, and just ask them what their procedures are and what they anticipate, what they want for you to do. Okie dokie, that's taken us bang on to nearly past, so I'm gonna finish now. You've kept me busy. You kept me busy, and I do need to go and clean the house. You've been great as always. As always, I am on a Tuesday and a Thursday. Anybody wanting to do the first aid class, there are still some spaces on this evening. So you can go to Let's Talk Birth and Baby.co.uk and book on to the first aid class this evening, where we talk about CPR, choking, not bathing, croup, bumps to the head, fever, all your normal jazz. So please do book on if you are free this evening. And other than that, I shall see you all soon. I'll be back next week on Instagram, 4 o'clock on Tuesday, and same place, same time next week. Take care. Oh, missed your question, right? Oh, hold on, Maria. Maria, hang on. Don't go. Don't go. Where are you? Where's your question, Maria? Retype it, my lovely, because I can't see it. Retype your question, Maria. Genuinely isn't here. If you retype it, my love, I will answer it if I can. Just waiting. Mine too. Leona, where's your question? I'm looking, I can't see Leona's. If you retype them, guys, and I will answer them. Going right the way back here, and I cannot see these questions. Right, I'm going to wait, because if you retype them, I will stay on and I will answer. See, the good thing with Instagram is you can talk about this, but I can't. Just waiting. Why is it not coming up? I'm going to have to end if the question doesn't come. Oh, right, here we go. We've got Leona's question. Oh, we've got both questions. I don't know where they're going. Hi. Basically, my little one, he's 13 weeks old. When I changed his nappy, there seemed to be a blood spot. It started when he has his first vaccination on the 15th December. On the same day, I took him to the hospital. Because at the time, GP don't have appointments. So the health visitor said, call 111, and then said, took him to A&E. So I took him to the hospital that day. He had a high fever as well. They treated him, and when his fever had gone down, they discharged him. And about blood spot, they said just keep an eye on him and then contact my GP if you feel worried. To contact my GP last week, and the doctor said they think it's come from the bump, not well. But today he feel he's got increased the blood spot. I'm really sorry, Maria. Without being able to see this baby or what it is, I just can't say. I think it. I'm at a loss on that question, I'm afraid, because I can't assess him. It is pretty much out of my scope of practice as well, I'm afraid. But I would go back to the GP if you're worried. Yeah. Sorry, my love. I'm 41 weeks on Friday, been offered a suite, but I want a home birth. What are the benefits, disadvantages of waiting for baby to arrive on its own? So a suite wouldn't stop you doing that. It's a sort of outpatient thing. Your midwife would do it. And I would say it's probably, you know, we have women who have suites and then go into natural labour. It doesn't alter that path. So I would say definitely have the suite because it's not going to do any harm. The disadvantages and advantages of waiting for baby to arrive on their own. Again, I think it's a very personal thing, and I think that we are we're sort of surrounded by a lot of people that teach antenatal classes that say, oh, don't, you know, and I had somebody yesterday that said, had been told by their hypnobirthing teacher, don't do induction, you don't need induction. We don't need to be listening to people who are not clinically qualified, but equally there is that balance. So I think that's like I often say to people, you know, they'll go into the hospital because they've got reduced movements, they're not happy with baby's movements, so they go in, and a bit like anything, you go in there and suddenly it's like this bloody baby's moving all over, and so parents are reassured. But the hospital may say, well, actually, you're 41 weeks, you've just come in with reduced movements. If you want, we'll induce you. Now, it's perfectly reasonable at that point for you to say, well, actually, I am reassured by the movements. Baby seems to be fine, but I am getting a bit later down the line. Can I just come in for a bit more of an increased monitoring? So would you put me on the monitor a bit more? And that's perfectly reasonable to have that conversation. It could be, though, that they're saying, you know, if you start to get to 42 weeks, that's 2 weeks over your due day, and they're saying, you know, we're looking at the monitor, we're concerned about placental function and those sort of things, then you start to think, actually, are the benefits outweighing the risks? I think it's a conversation to have with your GPs. The research that the NHS works with is based around the fact that placental function has been shown to diminish as we start to go further and further overdue. But it is questioned, and it's argued that that's, you know, people do argue that and say that we shouldn't interfere. I disagree. I do think that there does come a point where women should take induction, but I don't necessarily feel that that's at 40 weeks and 2 days. So I think that it's a discussion for you to have with your consultant, because they know you best and they're clinically trained. And I think as well, being reassured, and I was talking to another colleague about this earlier today, that, you know, all the people that I've ever worked with, consultants, midwives, support workers in the hospital, they genuinely do want you to have the best outcome for you and your baby. And ideally, we would want everybody to go and have a beautiful natural water birth. But we do know from experience that that isn't always necessary, that isn't always possible for every single woman. And to get the best outcome for both mum and baby and partner is induction. So I think it's a very personal thing, and talking it through with your consultant is your best bet. I hope that does help. Yes, I do hope it helps. But yes, I would definitely have the sweep. It's not going to do any harm whatsoever. That's it. You're all good. I hope I've answered all your questions now. Sorry about that. I don't know why I wasn't seeing it, but I wasn't. But we've answered them. So I shall see you all next week. Have a nice weekend. Take care.